Hello, good people. Hello, welcome back to another car conversation. I want to resume our conversation about Project 2025. I want to make sure that I do as much education as possible in regards to the threat that we are up against and hopefully add to the argument for electing Kamala Harris in 2024. So let's start in chapter 18 of Project 2025. I'm going to start on page 605, where it addresses moving. So taking federal law, removing federal law in regards to unions, the ability for workers to organize, and also overtime pay. So taking those two federal laws, right, that have been in place since the 1930s and giving that power to the states and local governments in regards to how they want to address unionizing for corporations, for workers of corporations, and then also overtime pay. Okay? Whether or not people can make overtime pay when they've actually worked overtime. On page, what page is that? On page 592, here's how the overtime should be addressed. So overtime currently, right now, as federal law states, overtime should be paid 1.5 times the worker's overall rate, okay? What Project 2025 proposes is that you give the ability for states and local governments to determine what that rate is and whether or not there will even be a rate. And how they have proposed that employers can look at this, or how employers can address this, is basically saying, let's, as opposed to looking at a 40-hour work week, let's look at our calendar as in regards to 2-week increments or even a month increment. Okay. So for example, if I'm looking at, if my employer set up a 2-week increment program, if I work 35 hours one week and I work 45 hours the next week, my employer under Project 2025 could come back and say, well, the second week you work 45 hours, but that week, the first week, you only work 35 hours. So we're going to take that 5 hours that you did in the second week, put it with the first week, and you basically worked only 40 hours this week and 40 hours that week. So you get no overtime pay for that extra 5 hours that you worked the second week. That's how they're proposing overtime be addressed by employers. Are you okay with that, America? Are you okay with that? So that's undoing, moving on, undoing the New Deal. The New Deal, part of the New Deal was to protect young people in regards to working, because prior to the New Deal, you had children in factories, young people in factories. When I say young people, I'm talking, 18 and below, losing limbs, losing fingers, dying altogether because they were in work environments that were unsafe for young, underdeveloped minds. And also their challenges in regards to the physical ability, because their bodies hadn't even developed to the point to where they could handle machinery like the common man or woman, like an adult could. So the New Deal proposed, no, we're going to keep children of a certain age out of factories, out of work environments. And then when they become of a certain age, let's say around 16, I believe most states are 16 now. They used to be like 14. Texas used to be 14. I know that because I started working at 14. But 16 is typically the age right now that young people can start working. But still, you have to ask the question, if children are old enough to start working at 16 and operate heavy machinery at 16, why is it, yes, they're allowed to drive, but why is it that insurance companies have higher rates for young people until they're about 25? And I'm going to tell you why that is. Because the frontal lobe of their brain is not fully developed. No one's brain is not fully developed until you're about mid-20s. That's why insurance companies have set that age of 25. because the frontal lobe is responsible for our ability to make good judgments, um, to modulate our behaviors in regards to like aggression and excitement, um, decision-making skills, like all of that is located in one central part of the brain, the frontal lobe, which is not fully developed. So if we have insurance companies that are implementing higher rates for young people, then why do we think that young people should be employed in companies or factories where they can be operating heavy machinery? You got to ask yourself that question. But what Project 2025 proposes is that we roll back all of that, and on the state level, they can determine what age children can begin working. And we've already seen this happen in the state of Arkansas with Governor Huckabee Sanders. She's already done this. She's already changed the child labor laws. Look it up, Google it. Then you have on page 592, already over, so 592, that addresses the overtime breakdown, you know, for how employers can handle that. So I've already discussed that. On page 604. So if the Project 2025 is proposing that if you have a private company, you do not have to match, you no longer have to match whatever the federal or the state has mandated for minimum wage. For example, in my state of California, minimum wage was just recently moved up to $20 an hour, right? Trying to create a living wage for folks versus a minimum wage. Project 2025 on page 604 wants to provide the ability, if you have a private corporation, you can determine what the minimum wage is for your workers. You don't have to abide by state laws. You don't have to abide by federal laws. That's in Project 2025. Page 595, I already discussed that with teenagers being able to work. Page 583. Page 583. Roll back laws that have been in place since Lyndon B. Johnson in regards to discrimination in the workplace. Listen up, everybody, because this is going to apply to a lot of you, including myself. So they want to roll back federal law that states you cannot be discriminated against in the workplace because of your color, because of your race, because of your religion, creed, all of those things, right? They want to roll that back so employers and corporations can hire and fire at will anybody based on whatever they want to base it on. So you're working for a corporation, you're doing just fine, and they hire a new manager. That manager comes in and says, I don't like Black people. I don't think women should be working in this position. You're a Muslim. You're not Christian. I'm getting rid of all the people that I don't like because of their color, because of their ethnicity, because of their gender, because of their religion, because that's just what I want to do. And corporations, according to Project 2025, will have the ability to do that. That's what we're looking at within another 45 administration. That's what we're up against. That's what 45 wants to usher in. And let me say this. There's a whole separate conversation on page 595 about the LGBTQI community. So you got discrimination, color, religion, creed, ethnicity over here. And then they specifically give a totally different outline and address on a totally separate page the LGBTQI community. Always get tongue tied on that. So, what does that tell you? Does that tell you that not only are these communities, these marginalized communities over here, going to be targeted, but we want to specifically target this community over here? So, in a nutshell, Chapter 18 addresses the Department of Labor, changes in the Department of Labor for Project 2025, what they propose, what they want to implement, if they are able to take the White House and get 45 back in the White House, this is what they want to do in regards to labor laws. And this is just a fraction, folks, a fraction. Again, I highly encourage you to read it for yourself. So we have legalized discrimination. We have rolling back the ability for people to obtain overtime pay, putting children back in harm's way in regards to labor and in the workplace. They were taken advantage of. They were put in harmful positions and physically, mentally, sexually. Some of these children, they want to roll back all of those safeguards for young people, or preventing young people being put into compromising and harmful positions in the workplace, and roadblocks to unionizing to prevent all these things from happening to all these groups of people. I'm going to reiterate this. I'm going to keep saying it until we win this election. Please read Project 2025. It poses a threat to all of us. Life as we know it today will cease to exist if 45, the Heritage Foundation, White Christian Nationalists, the Federalist Society are able to take the White House, get into office, and implement Project 2025. And if it feels like I'm trying to scare you into voting for the opposite of what I just discussed, I am. Because you should be afraid. You should want to protect your family, your livelihood, your ability to support yourself, your ability to maintain an occupation, a career, your ability to work in safe, non-hazardous workplace. All of these things, all of these protections must stay in place. And the only way for us to ensure that that happens is to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in 2024. We've got to do it in November. So please do your part. All hands on deck. One team, one fight. Because when we fight, we win, and we must win for all of us in November.